You were a good daughter-in-law all this time. I don't want to see your face anymore. Get out of this house. Yes, just like a parasite, get out of here. Harsh words were thrown at me by my sister-in-law and mother-in-law, even though I had been taking care of my mother-in-law after my husband's death. I could not bear any longer the insults my sister-in-law was throwing, even at my husband who cared about his mother till his last moments. All right, I'll leave as you wish. They rejoiced, but a few months later, my mother-in-law came crying to me. Their fate turned out to be more terrible than I expected. My name is Stella. I am 32 years old and work as a buyer for luxury brands. I met my husband, Bill, through a mutual friend. Bill, with his kind and gentle character, was my ideal husband, and I was so happy when he proposed. Bill was the oldest son, and his parents were independent, so we managed to maintain a good distance, and I never had issues with my in-laws, even after marriage. The balance between my responsible father-in-law and my laid-back mother-in-law seemed just right from my point of view. From Bill's perspective, his mother was too casual about money, which seemed to concern him for her future when she would be left alone. However, as long as his father was in good health, it didn't seem to be a major concern. Plus, Bill had a sister, Claire, 2 years older than him. She was divorced and living alone, but I thought she would certainly care for our in-laws since she was single. But Bill didn't seem to trust Claire much. "I'm a bit worried about leaving money matters to Claire," he said. "Why so?" "Well, Claire has had her share of issues in the past." In retrospect, Bill's concerns were justified, but at the time I didn't pay much attention to Claire's past. We continued our peaceful married life until a few years later, when my father-in-law's chronic illness worsened, and he passed away. My mother-in-law, who had relied heavily on him, was extremely distressed. "Cheer up, mother-in-law," I said. "But how am I supposed to live on my own when he was the one who always took care of everything around the house?" Just like Bill said, I too was worried about mother-in-law managing on her own. If I felt that way, I could only imagine Bill's worries. One night, Bill came to talk to me. "Stella, could we live together with my mom?" The proposal was sudden, but I was expecting it to some point. However, what concerned me was Claire. But wouldn't it be better if Claire moved in with her? "I want to take care of my mom in place of Dad from now on. Mom's particularly clueless about money, so I plan to manage her bank account too." "So you can't delegate that to Claire?" "That's not an option." Unusually, Bill was firm. "It's the money that Dad left for her. I'll manage it properly so Mom doesn't have to struggle." He seemed guilty for asking me to live together, but when it came to managing the inheritance and bank account left by his father, Bill was unwavering. "All right, it sounds fun to live together with mother-in-law. Besides, I worry about leaving her alone seeing how she is." "Thank you, Stella." So we started living together in my mother-in-law's house. My mother-in-law had really left everything to her husband, from managing the bank account, paying utility bills, to credit card payments. She knew nothing. Bill managed everything separately from our account and started giving her a monthly allowance for living expenses. It was part of Bill's duties to caution his mother whenever she was about to fall for a suspicious door-to-door sales pitch or was being pressured to buy expensive cosmetics by acquaintances. Without such interventions, his carefree mother would readily pay money at the encouragement of others. She shared the household chores with me, understanding the fact that I was a working woman. Our life together was progressing smoothly. However, our tranquil life came to an abrupt end when Bill collapsed at his workplace. He had been overworking during a particularly busy period at his job and had the same chronic illness that his father did. As a result, he was hospitalized. His mother and I visited the hospital daily, but there was no sign of improvement in Bill's condition. "Stella, I have a favor to ask of you, for after I'm gone." "Don't talk like that. You'll get discharged for sure, and we'll all live together again." I was prepared for this, knowing that I had the same disease as my father. I want you to listen to my request. It's about my mother." With tears streaming down my face, I listened to my husband's final request. Bill passed away a few weeks later. By keeping busy with notifying those who knew him and arranging for his funeral, I was able to distract myself from the grief of losing my husband. It wasn't until everything had settled down that I remembered what Bill had asked me to do. There was no time for mourning. Now it was my turn to take care of his mother in Bill's place. "Mother-in-law, I'm sorry for the chaos till now. From now on, I'll handle the money management in place of Bill. I'll provide you with your living expenses just like before." "Stella, even without Bill, are you going to stay with me?" "Of course. Bill had asked me to take good care of you, so please let me continue to stay with you." "Bill said that, huh?" Mother-in-law said with tears in her eyes. "I feel bad for burdening you with the finances when you're all so busy." "No, keeping busy actually helps me cope." However, it seems that Claire, my sister-in-law, was not amused by the fact that I was continuing to live there. When she found out that I was managing the finances, she barged into our home. "Why is Stella, who's essentially a stranger now that Bill's gone, still living here? And isn't it strange that she's managing the finances?" Before he passed away, Bill asked me to take care of mother-in-law and the finances. "Huh, you're just saying that because it suits you, aren't you?" "No, it was Bill's wish." "What? Just because you mentioned Bill's name?" Despite her dissatisfaction, Claire backed down for the time being, only to return to our house in a fluster the following week. "Stella, I saw it. You're having an affair." "An affair?" "I saw you entering a men's designer shop and dining at a high-end restaurant with a man. Stella, you're spending our money on your lover, aren't you?" "That's not true. I'm not doing anything like that." "No more excuses. How heartless can you be, moving on to the next man so soon after Bill's passing? You agree with me, don't you, Mom?" Mother-in-law, completely believing Claire's words, started to view me with suspicion. "Stella, so that's what it was?" "No, that's not it. I'm here because of Bill's wishes." As I tried to tell the truth, Claire interrupted me. "Don't use Bill as an excuse while having an affair. You're the worst." Silenced, I was stared down coldly by my mother-in-law and Claire. My mother-in-law said harshly, "I really misjudged you. I thought you were a good daughter-in-law until now. I don't want to see your face anymore. Get out of this house." Claire exclaimed triumphantly, "That's right. Get out of here, you parasite." If I give up here, I would be wasting Bill's wishes. As I patiently endured their words, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law seemed to take pleasure in their onslaught. "Why on earth did Bill even choose someone like you, Stella?" "He's always been a bit too trusting, hasn't he?" "Well, we can't really say, can we? For all we know, Bill might have just been saying he's managing Mom's money, while really using it for his own needs." Despite their cruel words against Bill, who cared for his mother-in-law until his dying breath, I'd had enough. I might be able to bear insults against me, but I can't stand you speaking ill of my late husband. Bill, I'm so sorry I couldn't keep my promise. I apologized to Bill in my heart, then turned to my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. "Fine, I'll leave as you wish." As I said this, their faces lit up with joy. "Finally realize you're the outsider, huh? And don't forget to leave the checkbook behind." Of course. But 3 months after cutting ties with them, my mother-in-law called me. "Stella, I got a notice that my card payment didn't go through. What does that mean?" It seems that her incompetence in handling money hasn't changed even after I left. My mother-in-law, however, ignores this and continues to berate me. "We've never had this problem before. Ever since you left, the money has suddenly disappeared. You stole it, didn't you?" "What?" "This isn't something we can solve over the phone. Come over here now," she said, abruptly hung up the phone. Despite my reluctance, I had no choice but to head to her place. At the house, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were waiting for me. I walked past my raging mother-in-law, logged into the online banking, and showed her the account balance. Here is the statement. As you can see, the balance was never in the negative while I was here. Can you guess why? What? Isn't that because you saved money? You're not exactly known for being good with money, are you? The balance never went negative because I was depositing $1,500 each month for living expenses. Living expenses? You were depositing money for that? Ever since the time Bill was alive, we've always done it that way. We discussed that if we paid a little more than our share of the rent for living together, it would prevent my mother-in-law's savings from decreasing. Bill was... Even after Bill passed away, I carried on his sentiment and continued to pay the same amount from my salary. Of course, after being kicked out of the house, I stopped paying. Next, I showed her the statement after I left. And this is the statement after I left. Over $1,500 is gone. Seems like someone has been living quite luxuriously. I haven't changed my lifestyle at all. Then perhaps Claire has been using it? I looked at my sister-in-law and checked the details on the statement. According to these transaction records, the money was spent at high-end boutiques and fancy restaurants. It certainly doesn't look like expenses you would make. Claire, do you know anything about this? I have no idea. Really? Because I don't think there's anyone else who could use it. There's someone else, you. What? You might have secretly made a family card or something. After all, the places where money has been used are the same high-end shop and restaurant where I saw you. Even after leaving the house, you're still coveting Mom's money. You're so greedy. Enough of this. The reason I was at that shop was for work. The meal at the restaurant was a business meeting combined with a discussion with the owner of the shop. Work? You could say anything about that. If you're going to say that much, okay. While checking the statement, I called the owner of the shop. Yes, it was last Friday. The product's name is... As I spoke firmly, Claire stared at me in astonishment. Yes, please attach it to an email. That would be helpful. Oh, I see. Thank you for the information. After hanging up the phone and checking the email, I showed my mother-in-law and sister-in-law the video attached to the email I received. The picture showed my sister-in-law Claire purchasing designer goods. What? What is this? Upon seeing the image, Claire's face quickly paled and she screamed out. I phoned the store owner and had him send me a snapshot of the person buying the goods from the security camera footage on the day of the transaction. There's no doubt it's you, Claire. Do you have anything else to say? Claire stayed silent, unable to defend herself. Ah, and by the way, I was informed by the owner that recently, right after the products were sold, identical items have been popping up at nearby pawn shops. This also matches the date when you made the purchases with your card, doesn't it? Well, that's... Claire's flustered demeanor spoke volumes about the truth of the situation. My mother-in-law asked inquisitively, "Why would anyone buy something only to immediately sell it? Such a hassle." In lieu of the silent Claire, I answered, "She needed cash, didn't she? If she directly withdrew the money, it would become apparent that it was her doing so. She tried to frame me by specifically choosing a store that I frequently visit, right?" Claire kept silent, having no room for rebuttal. Yet my mother-in-law still had some doubts. But why did she need so much money? It was to repay debt. I supplemented Claire's whispered words. It seems she hid this from you, but the reason Claire got divorced was because of her debt, wasn't it? Even before their marriage, my husband Bill was often distressed about Claire constantly borrowing money from him. He used to lament her about her unchanging spendthrift habits even after marriage. Debt, you say? At that point, my mother-in-law seemed to realize something. My late husband's inheritance! The passbook to the account holding the inheritance was entrusted to Claire, wasn't it? Don't tell me you... Upon being asked by my mother-in-law, I also checked the balance of the account holding my father-in-law's inheritance. The balance is 0. Zero? All of it was withdrawn a few days after I left. No way! As my mother-in-law began to crumble, Claire screamed out, I had no choice. The due date for my debt repayment was closing in. If it's me, his daughter, using it, my father would definitely forgive me. That money was left for me by my husband. Claire, you did receive your portion of the inheritance, didn't you? And yet you spent even your mother's money. You're the real parasite. I'm cutting ties with you. Wait, we promised that I live here in Stella's stead, remember? If I live with a daughter like you who can't control her spending, I'll end up broke too. First of all, you need to pay back all the money you took from me. Saying so, my mother-in-law practically threw Claire out. However, whether this was the right choice, we do not know. After she was evicted, it became difficult to get in touch with Claire, and she never recovered any of the spent inheritance from her husband. My mother-in-law, who could have spent her later years comfortably, seems to be leading a frugal life all alone now. Claire did manage to repay her debts, but seemed unable to shake off her spending habits and soon found herself in new debts. She seems to be running from debt collectors, moving from place to place. Since leaving my husband's family home to live alone, I have finally been able to come to terms with Bill's death. The outcome was completely different from Bill's intention, but I do not regret it. In his last will, Bill told me, "What I want prioritized most is Stella's happiness." By separating from my in-laws who disrespected Bill's feelings, I was able to protect the memories of my husband. I'm sure Bill would forgive my decision. From now on, I plan to live slowly, indulging in the happy memories with Bill.